Hello everyone, I'm Colin Kinnett, and today's a very special day for me because today I finally purchased my cordless sander, something I've been asking for from manufacturers for years and years and years, and finally they're available. So let's have a look at it. Now this new sander is replacing the old Bosch that I've had for I think 12 or 15 years. I've already replaced the pad on it once. This one is going again. So rather than replace this one, I thought this is a perfect time to finally get a new cordless sander. And those of you who follow my channel will know how much I love sanding. So hopefully this is going to ease my pain. Let's have a look at it. Okay, well, there's warranty and instruction manual. I'll have a look at that in a moment. And there's only sort of 3 parts in there. Look at they even give you a sanding disc. But what it contains basically is the sander and a little dust bag that will collect on there. Before we get too deep into the new sander, not everybody knows exactly what a random orbital sander is, and I'm just going to turn my old one on here just to give you a bit of an idea. Basically what happens is as the disc spins around, it also does a bit of a circular motion, and what that does, why that's so important, is because it doesn't always spin in the same direction, and every sanding disc basically scratches a surface. That's how they sand, and when you do it in different different etchings every time, what happens is you scratch a surface one way, then another part of it comes back and over scratches it another way, and what that does is it smooths the surface, but it leaves an irregular pattern so that it doesn't leave lines of sand scratches, and that's why it's so important. But you can see when it goes slow how it wobbles. Let's try this one here, see if that's any better. You can sort of see how that's how it sort of wobbles as it sands. And that's what makes these sanders so efficient, is because of the orbit that they take, and they make a very smooth cut, and they sand very quickly. So back to this new sander, and what you probably noticed is that I didn't take a battery out, and that's because when I purchased this, I purchased the tool only. So the battery would go in here, but I already have 18-volt tools. This is a circular saw, and I can just take a battery out of it, and now I have batteries that I can exchange for different tools. So that's why this one didn't come with a battery. So that's where the battery goes, and the dust collector fits on there, and of course there's a bit of an extension because they need to leave room for the battery in there. So let's take a quick look at the tool, and there's actually 2 switches on top. One of them is an on-off switch, and the other one has a 1, 2, 3 on it. I don't know if you can see that, but this is a 3-speed sander. Unlike my old sander that had a wheel on it where you could adjust the speed of it, this one just has 3 play settings, and I actually prefer that, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes. But what I wanted to look at first of all, a lot of these tools now are coming with dust collectors, and as I was looking at that, I noticed that there's a collar here, or maybe a shroud, I'm not sure what they call it, but I see that there's a screw in there, and what it looks like, and there's a hinge, it looks like you can loosen this, and you would be able to pivot this around to any location. So if you were using the dust collector, out the back, of course, would be one way of doing it. But if you were connecting this to your dust collector, for example, maybe your dust collector comes out this way from where you sand, and you would be able to just loosen that screw, move that shroud around to this area, and connect that to your dust collector. So I like the way that they've got this. It makes it more adjustable. Now these dust bags, a lot of them used to have baffles inside, and I don't think this one does. There it is. Yeah, it's actually just a bag. You can see that there's nothing in there. Um, I really didn't like the baffles in there. They're very hard to clean. This one will be much easier to clean. You might need to clean it more frequently, but I think it's going to work better than the dust collector from my old unit that had the baffles in it. And it just sticks on like that, nothing fancy. And the battery goes on, and it's basically ready to go after you put some sandpaper on it. Now, this sander comes as this is what we call a 5-inch sander. They take a 5-inch disc. I do not believe it comes in a 6-inch yet. There may be one coming at some point in the future, but you know what? The difference between them is not a lot. So, of course, the 6-inch is a little bit bigger, so it sands more area than this one. So it's a little bit quicker in terms of sanding. What I like about this one is a smaller sander, of course, lets you get into areas a little bit smaller. Like I can get really close. You can see how close that gets to those. There's just a little area that around like that. There's just a little area in there that I can't get at. So if I'm sanding inside of something, because this area is so small, you can get in pretty close. So that's one of the advantages of having a smaller sander. And the disadvantage, of course, is you don't get quite as much sanding area. It takes you a tiny bit longer to do some sanding. Let's talk about those switches for a second. Now, when this turns on, it defaults to the highest speed. And typically when you're sanding, you want to be on the highest speed. But I'm just going to take a minute here and cycle through the 3 speeds, and hopefully you'll be able to hear the speed difference and watch it. Now, the 3 speeds, the reason I really like 3 speeds, my older one, and a lot of them have a wheel on it, and the wheel is fine, but I find people adjusting the wheel, and I ask them, how come you're adjusting the wheel? And they seldom can tell me. They just adjust the speed for no particular reason. But look, when you're sanding, we typically sand at the highest speed. For polishing, we would use a lower speed, and where you would use the middle speed would be if you were sanding something like this plywood. This is an oak surfaced plywood, and you want to be careful that you're not going to sand through it, and that's where you would use number 2, is to make sure that you didn't sand through that very thin layer of oak, for example. So that's why this comes on. It goes to the high speed right away, and then you can cycle to whatever you want, and then of course you turn it back off with the off-on switch. So I actually like the 3 positions, and it defaults to the high one right away. A good thought on that. I like that feature. Now, I know some of you are going to be asking, well, how come you didn't do any sanding? And the reason is, today we're just looking at the sander. If I was looking at sandpaper, I'd probably do some comparisons, because I use, for example, the Klingspor, I use Diablo sandpaper, and I use others. I use a variety of sandpapers, and it's really not fair to put one in and sand with it and not another. So that's a whole other video that I may tackle later on. So today it was just the sander. Well, that concludes my video today, looking at the Makita cordless sander. It just happens to be the one that I picked because I have some batteries that fit in, and I'm looking forward to using it. And again, those of you that follow my channel know how much I hate sanding, so maybe this is going to breathe some new life into my sanding challenges. I'm Colin Canet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.